It's hard to believe that it has been over 20 years since the Resident Evil series began, with March 22nd of 2016 being the series' 20th anniversary. Over this time frame, the games in the franchise have changed significantly, starting as a third-person horror game with fixed camera angles in the original title, before switching over to an over-the-shoulder third-person shooter in Resident Evil 4. Whether you agree with the series' change in formula, they are once again changing things up in their latest title, Resident Evil 7. This time making the game a first-person horror title with clear inspirations from games like PT and Allison Road.
Stay the fuck out!
The game's overall scale is much smaller than its more recent installments, pretty much taking place in one centralized area. You will be playing as Ethan, a man looking for his missing wife, Mia, after he receives a notification that points to her possible location being in a Louisiana swamp. Here he meets the enigmatic Bakers, all of whom tend to act in a crazed manner, jumping quickly between welcoming and hostile at the drop of a hat. You will have to try and make your way through the Baker plantation, wandering through the massive puzzle of a manor that they have built, while defending yourself from the Bakers themselves. As mentioned before, the entire game is shown in first person, directly from Ethan's point of view. This isn't entirely new, as the Resident Evil series has played with first person perspectives before in the Gun Survivor and Chronicle series. That being said, this is the first numbered Resident Evil title to have such a drastic change in focus. The end result works rather well, with its claustrophobic environment's dark atmosphere and excellent sound design. So, while the game isn't perfect, it does succeed in getting back to its horror-based roots. Early on in the game, exploration and attention to detail are going to be a survivor's best friend, as looting through everything in order to find additional health items and ammunition are going to be what saves you from the early encounters. Multiple times I found myself fighting for my life, unsure of whether or not I would have enough supplies for the next major encounter. This lessened a bit towards the tail end of the game, when items become more abundant, but I never felt like I was drowning in ammunition as I have in some of the past few Resident Evil titles. From a horror aspect, this is probably one of the scariest Resident Evil games that I personally have ever played. Though, to be honest, the series really hasn't scared me since the remake of Resident Evil back in 2001, and to be completely honest, I was 11 at the time. The game's ambience helped to make everything feel a little bit unsettling at the beginning of the game, making it easy for dread to set in. As the game progressed, I did start to notice certain patterns in gameplay, which did lessen the overall suspense, but even still, the promise of a true survival horror experience was met. When it comes to the enemies of the game, the Baker family steals the show. Until you are faced in an encounter with these stalkers, generally you're going to be spending most of your time hiding from them. And once you do fight against them, their very presence can be almost overwhelming. They aren't the only enemies in the game, however. You will eventually come into contact with the shapeless molded, enemies that look like giant mounds of black sludge that probably should have been refrigerated. I found my time interacting with the molded to be somewhat mixed when compared to the Baker family. While they are physically intimidating, with even one of them being a real threat, in the long run they're fairly forgettable, following the same archetype as the Regenerators in Resident Evil 4 and the Ooze in Resident Evil Revelations. They show up sparingly in the beginning of the game, but begin to show up in increased numbers towards the end. And while they are somewhat frightening the first time you see them, by the end they're more of an annoyance than an actual threat. Story-wise, the game feels very isolated from the rest of the series, not really expanding upon where the past few games have left off. While the very end does bring up new information and questions for the series, the majority of the game takes no notice of past titles. That being said, for longtime fans of the series, there are a few Easter eggs hidden here and there. Considering how lacking 2016 was with horror titles, Resident Evil stands out as the first good horror game that I've played in quite a while. And I actually mean that. It's a good horror game. Not a good action game like the series has kind of devolved into over the past, but an actual horror title. While this new shift in focus does create questions for where the series will go from here on, I can't help but enjoy Resident Evil 7 when taken on its own. For anyone who enjoys a good horror title, especially those who are fans of games like PT and Amnesia, I would definitely recommend giving Resident Evil 7 a shot. You don't have to be a fan of the Resident Evil series as a whole, or be caught up on all the lore of the series in order to enjoy Resident Evil 7. Hey, thanks for watching our review of Resident Evil 7. If you enjoyed our video, please give us a like and subscribe. With the way YouTube now pushes videos, it really helps us get noticed. Also, if you enjoy horror titles, we do a series called You Only Live Once, where one of us will play a game, usually a horror title, and we'll try and get as far into the game as we can without dying. Usually my friend Oshpanky is the one who plays, and if you haven't gotten a chance to see her play, it is the most amazing thing ever. Seriously, I seriously recommend giving it a look. Anyway, I thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.
They locked me up and took my soul.